When I was a little girl, I lived in the countryside. My best friend and only friend was another young girl, the same age as me. Her parents and mine had been good friends, so just like that, we quickly became close. We went to the same school, rode the same bus, and spent the night at each other's house often. Her name was Ellie. When I met Ellie, around 8, she, just like me, was going through her stuffed animal phase. You know, the one dressing them up, playing pretend, speaking to them, and waiting to hear back, even though we all know they don't speak. We were completely obsessed. My favorite stuffed animal happened to be a small stuffed bear. He had a rounded stomach and charcoal black eyes that always seemed to have a friendly glint in them. While he was meant to be white, his fur had grayed out a bit due to years of being played with by my cousins older than me, who handed him down. Lastly, he had a brown stitched nose, which led to a singular stitch-lined smile. I loved this little bear. In my eyes, he was simple, yet everything a kid could want. Everything I could ever want. While he had been called many different things by different family members, I called him Koda. During the first couple of weeks, Koda was fairly normal. I played with him all the time and took him everywhere with me. Sometimes Ellie would come over after school and we would play games without our little animals. He and her were my partners in crime, my best of buds. But things began to get weird after a while, when I realized I would see flashes of white grayed fur in my peripheral vision. If I was walking to school with Ellie, I would swear I saw someone holding the bear, only to double take and see nothing. I didn't even realize it too much at first. When I did, I thought I was seeing things. Things got strange along the years, when I realized anything that hurt me would either end up dead or damaged. The neighbor cat had scratched me because I was being too rough. It died a week later. An anthill I'd stood next to had left me with red welts. It was destroyed before I could blink twice. One of the worst cases was at school. My bully had kicked me in the shin, causing me to fall over and scrape my knee to high heavens. As he stood there laughing, his voice changed to a screech as he too fell over. The yard aide ran over and checked on him and I, only to see he had a small chunk of his arm missing. But the time I would never forget was the night of what I call the incident. It was a cool summer night, years later, and me and Ellie were celebrating her 11th birthday. This night, we decided, was the perfect night for a sleepover at her house. I think if the incident had never occurred, it would have been the best night of my life. Ellie and I running and playing, her olive skin and kind smile forever ingrained into my mind. By now, we were much older than when we first got in our animals. By then, they sat inside while Ellie and I played mud tag outside or looked at the stars. But tonight was hide and seek tag. So as I was playing with my best friend, laughing and running, it was hard to see the glimpses of a grayed out white that flashed in my peripheral vision. But when I did see it, I ignored it. Koda, after all, was in Ellie's room. But eventually Ellie stopped playing and looked into the fields, and I too stopped. "Hey, what's wrong?" "Nothing, just kinda tired." "Wanna sit for a bit?" I nodded and we sat on the porch, looking into the miles and miles of corn. "Hey Callie." "Yeah?" "You ever wondered if we're getting too old for Koda and Deli?" Deli being her stuffed elephant. I thought before responding. "Sometimes. Why?" "Just curious." She smiled at me, before a rustling noise took her attention to the corn. We were quiet. "Callie, can we go in please? The corn is really starting to freak me out." "Why?" It just is. It's like something is staring at me. Let's just go in and watch TV or something." At the time, I thought she was being dramatic. as the corn couldn't be staring at you, and I knew her dad had put up fences all around the land. No one was there. Eventually, I was convinced, and we both went inside to watch our favorite movie. But we were more worn out than what we thought, and before we knew it, we were passed out against one another. Ellie's dad found us later and turned off the TV, bringing us up to her room, to the long blanket and 2 pillows we had set up so we can sleep next to one another. I'm not sure when it was, but that night I was awoken by Ellie, her brown eyes and shining smile twisted, contorted to fear and panic, tears flowing freely to land on my cheeks. She was directly over me, shaking me intensely. "Ellie, what's..." "Shh." She quieted me as her eyes grew wider. I was silent. We stared into each other's eyes, mine confused and hers still panicked beyond anything I'd seen. All she could do was slowly point up past her shoulder. It was Koda. He was on the ceiling, looking down directly at me. Those sick fucking eyes. It's hard to remember his different look, but what I do remember was his eyes swirled, and they went from black to dark, disgusting green. His seamed lips were open, showing his most wide, disgusting mimic of a human smile I had ever seen, and it was like he groaned joints. I say this because he was crab walking on the goddamn ceiling. "Ellie," I whispered shakily, "we need to leave." I couldn't stop looking as Koda's head twisted to the side, cracking the whole time. Yeah, she sniffled. "I'll keep an eye on him." "On me?" "Listen, you say what you want about this, that I spun it for attention, or that I made it up, but I am telling you now that whatever this little fucker was, he was a nightmare come to life. I have never heard such a greatly, badly mimicked voice, as if something was trying to talk like an adult man, but was failing miserably, like there was vomit stuck in his throat. It was then when he spoke, when he heard that horrid voice and truly felt the intended violence coming from those terrifying green eyes, that Koda began to move, and some animalistic instinct in me said that if that crazy wild-eyed motherfucker came down the ceiling, we would not be okay. So just like that, I stood, grabbed Ellie's hand, and we ran as fast as our legs could carry us, right out of the cursed room. It only made us run faster when we heard clicking of joints and the thump against the ceiling and walls. He was following us. "Go, go, go," I shouted as I turned around and slammed the door closed, but I wasn't strong enough, and whatever my beloved animal had turned into, it possessed strength beyond me. Although I used all the muscles I could, the door slowly began to open, a loud, disgusting cackle calling out from behind the door. I could do nothing but cry out in pain and horror, and its disgusting and awful hand reached out and stabbed its claw-like nails in my wrist. But before the door could open up more, Ellie grabbed my waist and yanked me backwards, slamming its hands in the door. Nails still dug into my wrist. If anything though, that made it worse. The cackling became a screech. The pulling of the door became a banging. "Open! Open, open, open! Open the door, Callie! Don't you want to play? Play? Or are you too old? Too fucking old?" The thing called out to me, taunting and screeching with venom in its voice. It went on like this for what felt like hours. The screeching, the taunting, the banging, and yanking on the door. All me and Ellie could do was hold on for dear life, crying silently as we did so. We screamed for help for so long, but it was as if no one could hear us. I think it was around the time the sun began to come up that its grip on my wrist loosened and it slowly took its nails out of my wrist. I blinked and the hand was gone, and the screaming slowly quieted down, becoming muffled whispers, then nothing. But we didn't stop. No matter how our muscles ached, no matter how much blood flowed freely from my wrist, we did not stop holding that door closed. But we couldn't hold it closed forever, and eventually, when the sun flooded in through the window down the hall, I began to let go. I had to. I was exhausted physically and mentally. "Follow me." Ellie stopped pulling on my waist, releasing me from her grasp. We stood there till my best friend led us downstairs, to the living room. We sat on the couch, huddled close, and did nothing but listen. Never once did my eyes close long enough to let sleep take over out of fear, although I'm not sure what we would have done had we heard the clicking of joints, or the cackling of that thing. After that night, after what we went through, that afternoon, we got a bat from a garage and I slowly entered Ellie's room. Although I was scared, I was not about to leave her with a demonic bear in her room. But we couldn't find a single thing, not a single trace of its presence. It's been 10 years since then. I'm 21 and Ellie and I just celebrated our 1-year anniversary together. Things had been going good. And after the therapy as a child and the medical help we both received when our parents became concerned with our lack of sleep, I think we just pushed that night out of our brains. We had to move on, needed to. But even if I wanted to, I've never been able to tell anyone what truly happened, nor have I wanted to. Every time I try, it's like my mouth is stuffed with cotton and a fierce headache starts up. But I've never tried typing out my story till now. The reason I'm telling it, a week ago, I received a box on my doorstep with a note and a Polaroid picture of Ellie asleep. All the note said was, "Ready to play? Play, play, Callie?" Ellie is staying with me now, but that doesn't mean we are safe, at all. These nights, I fall back to old habits. I don't sleep at all and spend all night waiting, listening for the clicking of joints and the cackling of a demon.